What's up guys, Asian here again with another PTS video, and today we're going to be exploring something that's actually pretty damn interesting, at the very least for stamina DPS. This involves using a two-hander as your backbar weapon. Yes, I know, it definitely sounds very strange coming from somebody who does endgame PvE kind of content, but there have been attempts to get a dual-wield two-hander parse as high as they possibly can on a Stamsork. I believe last I checked in, they were able to break, I think, 95k or something like that. By comparison, the dual-wield bow, I believe it's a dual-wield bow build that people are working on Stamsork, is pulling over 100k on the target dummy. Now, I'm not a Stamsork main. I don't normally play Stamsorks as my PvE DPS. My normal stamina DPS is usually the stamina Nightblade. So my parses are obviously going to be a little bit lower, but I thought I'd show you guys kind of why two-hander backbar is going to be a thing, and also the results themselves. So, a couple of things, actually a lot of things actually have changed in the patch notes for Scalebreaker. One of them being a couple of changes that were made to a lot of different skills. First, a couple of changes happened to the bow backbar, namely poison injection. The bonus execute damage was nerfed a little bit. Caltrops was nerfed by a significant margin. In terms of overall damage output, Soul Trap was buffed by a very large amount here, and all these sort of things sort of culminated in the idea that there is a chance, if you're using a Maelstrom two-hander backbar with an axe bleed was buffed a little bit here in Scalebreaker, that it might actually end up being very similar to a bow backbar. Now, the actual mathematics is not in favor of a two-handed backbar, but it is something that was kind of interesting to sort of explore a little bit. So what I have kind of seen done is, let me just unequip the Maelstrom dual wield backbar real fast, is use the Maelstrom battle axe. Again, bleeds were buffed for both the dual wield bleed and the two-handed bleed, and so the idea is that using the axe will allow you to get better bleed, which will allow you to take bigger advantage of deadly strike. Now on a Stamsork, because you don't have a class spammable, deadly strike's actually not terrible. Flurry is a damage over time component. Soul Trap is a damage over time. Does physical damage. Obviously, all your bleeds from your backbar two-hander bleed, as well as all your bow dots and things like that. So this could end up playing pretty well. So the Maelstrom two-hander, for those of you guys who haven't used it at all, which I don't blame you, it's not necessarily a set that's really been on the mind of anybody besides maybe PvPers way back when Stampede or Critical Charge used to stun people. It deals an additional physical damage over 5 seconds. Now, one of the big things with two-hander backbars used to be that there was no reliable way to proc enchants on your backbar. That has changed because of a change that they made with Stampede. Stampede now has a damage over time component over it, which is an AoE damage over time component, not a single target dot, which does mean Stampede will proc enchants on your backbar. Yes, I have tested this. Yes, it does work. Carve still does not proc enchants on your backbar because it's still considered a single target dot, even though it does have a cleave component associated with it. But the introduction of this AoE dot on Stampede does allow you to now proc enchants on your backbar with using a two-hander. It was actually one of the big weaknesses of two-hander backbars, which is why they were not very popular in PvE, sort of the endgame PvE community, because you were not able to proc your enchants on your backbar. But now with Stampede, you can actually do that very reliably. Now, of course, there were a few changes that also happened with the bow as well. So, for example, Endless Hail and Arrow Barrage, those dots have been weakened a little bit here, and so because of that, the Maelstrom two-hander backbar might look like a pretty good option, at the very least on a Stamsork. On other classes, it remains to be seen. And like I said, I've been seeing a few, there's one player in particular, Liquid Pony, that's really been trying to bang out as high of a parse as he possibly can with the dual-wield two-hander. It is very clunky because Stampede, even though there is no minimum distance required now to start, basically you can be right up against the boss and you'll be able to charge, it's still a little bit wonky because it basically places you right at the edges, right at the edge of the boss's hitbox. So for example, if I'm like kissing the boss, like let's say the target dummy is the boss right here and I use Stampede, it'll actually teleport you backward. So there's a little bit of quirkiness involved, and I'm still trying to figure out the exact rotation. But generally speaking, the bars are pretty much as you see here. So on your back bar, this is the two-handed bar, you would have Soul Split Trap or Soul Trap, you would have Stampede, you would have Carve, you would have Dark Deal, you would have Bound Armaments, and you would have Greater Storm Atronach. With Dark Deal and the advent of using Soul Trap as a potential dot now for stamina DPS, even Stam Slorks now, as long as you're able to use Dark Deal on cooldown, you are able to sustain using Blue Food. So we are able to use Blue Food, as you can see here, with our very high Stam and health. Front bar remain exactly the same. It's still Rending Slashes, Rapid Strikes, Hurricane. This time instead of Recovering Trap, it's Barbed Trap and Bound Armaments. The idea behind this is to use the VMA wield front bar in order to maximize our dots damage with Rapid Strikes, because it is going to be affected obviously by Deadly Strikes, which would give us in theory more damage. And so basically this was the two-handed bar, and for the bow I basically swapped out Stampede and Carve for the bow abilities, Arrow Barrage, and Poison Injection. Now for the actual results themselves, and I also want to share another set that I used that I thought might actually end up doing pretty well, and actually did pretty decent. Again, I'm still trying to figure out how to work out the rotation itself, so these numbers are preliminary, but they do seem to show some promise. Other Stamsork PV DPS mains have done much better parses, and so I would trust their data over my own data, because again, I don't really play Stamina Sorcerer as my main Stamina DPS. So this parse right here, I believe this one is with the two-hander, so you can see we're pulling about 88.5k, and this is the bow parse. We're pulling just shy of 91k. So it's interesting to see this, because normally you would not actually see two-hander be competitive at all. And yes, we are getting enchants, so we do have a Berserker enchant on the back bar, and you can see here on comment metrics it is showing up. So we are getting that enchant going on our back bar using a two-hander, which is one of the biggest weaknesses prior to this patch here. But generally speaking, it does seem like bow is still doing very well for itself. Arrow Barrage is the new morph that seems to be better than Endless Hail. A little bit worse for sustain, but it does deal more damage, assuming you're able to get it going. Poison Injection did see a bit of a nerf. It's still not quite as strong as it once was. So the damage itself, if you want to compare it to an actual elsewhere parses, it is definitely lower, and part of it is not affected by the Cruel Flurry, because Soul Trap is a lot stronger, as you can see here, and so we're trying to get Soul Trap, the Cruel Flurry buff, but I still want to go back, try the Poison Injection Cruel Flurry buff to see whether or not that improves our DPS or ends up lowering our overall DPS or not. So there's still a little bit of playing around here with the introduction of Soul Trap in the mix here, but generally speaking, it does seem like two-handed back bar is definitely a lot stronger than it used to be. It's definitely not the strongest, but for those of you guys who are getting bored of running dual-wield bow, this might be something that is worth looking into. If you have a Maelstrom battle axe on the back bar, certainly by all means you can go ahead and take a look at that. Now, another parse that I do want to show you guys, let me see if I can find it here, is it this parse or is it another parse? It might be this parse here, actually. So this is with one of the new sets. So this is, I can pull the set out real fast, is the new set, Drozakar's Claws. So for every bleed effect you have on an enemy, it increases your weapon damage by 200 against them. Now with a dual wield two-hander back bar, I thought, hey, this might actually be worth something. Carve is considered a bleed. I believe the Stampede is actually considered a bleed. The Maelstrom effect is considered a bleed. Rending Slashes is considered a bleed. And then you have the dual wield bleed, Axe Bleed, which is a bleed. And then you have the two-hander Axe Bleed, which is also a bleed. So you would have a total of 5 different bleeds, which would increase your weapon damage by 1,000. Now the downside is the Drozacar bonuses is not that great. You're basically losing out on one bonus, because one of them is a stamina regen, not a weapon crit or a weapon damage bonus. You do get some additional physical penetration there, so at the very least 2 out of the other 3 armor bonuses are pretty decent. And so that's what I ended up getting here. This was pre-adjusted. I just used I forgot that the set had a physical bonus here, so as you can see here, my physical penetration is much higher than it actually should be. So There is some tweaking that I have to do here, and again, I'm still working out the rotation and things like that, but it does seem like Drozakar might actually not be a bad choice if you're running dual wield two-hander Backbar, because the two bleeds do stack on top of each other, so you can see Twin Blade and Blunt, which is a dual wield, and the Heavy Weapons bleed, which is the two-hander bleed. They do stack on each other, so in theory, your weapon damage should be a lot higher. Now, it's not going to be reflected in combat metrics, so you can see here we have 4838 as our max, but if we go ahead and take a look at this other part here, we have 5236. And that is because Deadly Strike does have some additional weapon damage bonuses, so it's not reflected in combat metrics, but if it's working properly, we should be getting another 1,000 plus weapon damage with all of our bleeds going. Now, of course, we're not going to have all of them going at the same time. At most, probably get a Rending Slashes, Carve, probably the Stampede bleed, so at the very least we're getting 600 additional weapon damage and probably another 800 from one of the two bleeds. So it's definitely a set that I would be interested in playing around with on a dual wield two-hander build, but again, I'm still working out the kinks of the rotation, so be on the lookout for something about that, maybe further on down the line. Of course, we also need to see whether or not they're going to change things like Soul Trap. I think Soul Trap is overperforming a little bit too much here, but hey, maybe that's intended. So that's it for this PTS video. Let me know down in the comment section below if there's anything else you'd like me to explore. I've already have a few videos out concerning PTS content, so please let me know what you guys would like to see about this PTS. Is there a lot of big changes coming on with this PTS patch? So definitely give me any ideas, any sort of questions you might want me to explore, regardless of whether that be a 5-minute video or a 15-minute long video. So hope you guys found this video informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.